I'd like to welcome you tonight to our Candidates Forum. My name is Patrick Kelly, Chair of the Richland 2 Teacher Forum. And on behalf of the Teacher Forum and the League of Women Voters, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's School Board's Candidate Forum. For me, tonight is exciting on several levels. As a U.S. government teacher, there are a few topics I'm more passionate about than promoting civic engagement, so I'm thrilled that everyone in the audience has taken time out of their busy schedule to become educated about the candidates and positions in this important election. As a professional educator, it's encouraging to see so much community interest in the future direction of our schools. As I entered the auditorium tonight, I saw students, parents, teachers, educators, administrators, school and district level staff members, and representatives of numerous other professions and roles in our community. It's a privilege to work in a district like Richland 2 that receives the level of support and involvement that we do from our community. Noted U.S. educator John Dewey once stated that what the best and wisest parent wants for his own child, that must the community want for all their children. The participation at tonight's event is proof that our community has embraced Dewey's challenge. As we move through tonight's program, I'd encourage you to please listen carefully as the candidates share their thoughts and visions for our school district. Each of the candidates is offering an incredible service to our community through their willingness to serve on our school board, and I would like to thank each of them for their participation in tonight's event and their willingness to run for office. The goal of the Richland 2 Teacher Forum is to promote and advance the educational profession and the education of each child in Richland 2, and we feel like events like tonight's forum are an essential component of developing the foundation necessary to achieve those goals. We're thrilled to be able to partner with the League of Women Voters in arranging this candidate forum, and we are grateful for the League's expertise and service to the community. At this time, I would like to turn things over to the moderator of tonight's forum, former League President Rita Paul.
Thank you, Patrick. The League is excited to be here. We've helped with this forum before, and I'll just be very brief and ditto a lot of what Patrick said, and just also say that one of the primary goals of the League of Women Voters is to ensure that a lot of information gets out to folks so that you have enough information to make informed decisions when you go to the polls. So we are just really excited to be here. I'm going to just do some ground rules. All the candidates that you see up here have received a letter from the League President, Martha Robley, so they know a little bit about what we're going to do. The positive thing is that we have all of these candidates. The downside to that is that it's a real time constraint. And we've worked really hard to try to be as fair as we can be as we ask these questions and give the candidates time to respond. So, what we will do is each candidate, well, let me say this one thing first. Martha Robley, who's currently President, Sally Hughley, who is standing over here, have index cards. They are going to be available during this process. If you have a burning question while we're going through having the panel do their discussion, just raise your hand. They will bring you a card and you can write your question down. We will have time at the end to ask as many of those questions as we can. They'll take them up, look at duplication, that sort of thing. So that's at the end of the formal part of the session. Each candidate is going to have 1 minute to introduce themselves, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. We are going to ask 3 questions of all the candidates, and they will have 90 seconds to answer those questions. Now, normally when we do this, we like to mix things up as much as possible, give people an opportunity to go first, last, middle. It's going to be real difficult to do that tonight with the number of candidates and the time that we have. So, what we're going to do is we will begin opening at this end of the table with Ms. Anderson. We will begin closing at the other end of the table with Ms. Spector and just work back and forth. Ms. Anderson will also have the first question, and we'll just go straight through. Mr. Harmon, if you would, I will ask the second question beginning with you, and then we'll just go down and come back. And the third question will be Mr. Mobley. We will start with you and come the rest of the way and back. Alan Robley, who is sitting at the table in front of you, is our timekeeper. He is very important. And we discussed before we started, and again, the importance of moving through, and it's about fairness to all the candidates. So Mr. Robley, Allen will hold up the cards at 30 and 15 seconds and then ask you to stop. Okay. Let's begin then with opening remarks. And what we would like for you to do in addressing your opening remarks is to talk to us about what experience, knowledge, qualifications do you have that will make you a strong board member to create policies and influence important decisions at the district. Ms. Anderson.
Good evening. I am Melinda Anderson, a retired director of nursing from the Department of Corrections. My experience includes serving on your Richland School Board for the past 24 years. I have served as chair, vice chair, secretary, as well as a trainer and mentor for new board members across the state. I am not an advocate for zero tolerance. However, every situation should be judged on its own merits. I initiated increasing our social workers from 1 to 18, and nurses from 5 to 33 to ensure maximum service for all students. I insisted on after-school tutorial for all students, as well as an alternative learning environment. My unselfish compassion for excellence in education for all students is what drives me to ensure that our district continues to be academically competitive and produce students who can achieve their maximum performance level and are well prepared for their future.
Thank you. Ms. Caution Parker.
My name is Cheryl Caution Parker. Most of you know me as Cheryl Washington. I've spent 34 years here in Richland School District 2 and retired in June as a deputy superintendent. I started off as a student teacher at E.L. Wright Middle School, served as a teacher there, selected District Teacher of the Year, served as an administrator at Dent, principal of Forest Lake Elementary, principal of Dent Middle School, where we won National Blue Ribbon, Palmetto's Finest Exemplary Writing Award. My next move was to the district office as Chief Administrative Officer and the Deputy Superintendent under Dr. Steve Hefner. Over 34 years, 16 years have been spent at the district office supervising all the principals in the district, center lead teachers, implementing policies and procedures set forth by the board for the district, and developing future school leaders, and serving in the stead of the superintendent in her absence. So I've been around this district a very long time. I have the experience, knowledge, and understanding to serve as an effective school board member.
Thank you. Ms. Cleveland Jennings.
Good evening. My name is Chandra Cleveland Jennings. I'm a 27-year resident of Richland County. I work with Richland County Sheriff Department as 16 years as a school resource officer. Not only during that time that I worked as a school resource officer, I also involved into the community with the youth. I have a degree in education. I taught 1 year of 3rd grade in Richland District 1. And I have a nonprofit organization, Palmetto Youth Connection, within the area that have helped many kids within Richland District 2 graduate and stay in school. My focus is to keep kids in school, not expel them out of school, and also to make sure that bullying is put into our school policy and followed effectively for the bullier and the person who's being bullied. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dublin.
Good evening. I'm John Dublin. I'm a retired police officer, and I worked that job for about 22 years. I've also got 2 sons that graduated from Ridgeview High School. I have worked on the Student Improvement Council. I've worked on the band. I've worked on the Booster Club. I've been pretty active with Ridgeview when my sons went to school there. I'm also an educator, and I've been an educator for about 20 years almost, and I've worked every facet of education. I've been assistant to the superintendent, I've been a principal, I've been an assistant principal, and I've also been a teacher. I'm currently a substitute school teacher in Richland District 1. I'm an advocate for children, and I'm here to say that I want to make a change. I want to add to the wonderful work that the district has been doing, and I think all my experience and background will help me do just that.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon.
My name is Hugh Harmon. I'm first and foremost a parent and a resident of Richland 2. I have a 17-year career in public education. I have 3 master's degrees, one in literacy education, one in curriculum and instruction, and the other in educational leadership. Presently, I teach in Richland School District 1. I've been teaching there for the past 7 years. I reside in Richland 2. I have a passion for advocacy for young people. I have 3 tenets that I stand on. All kids can learn, all teachers can lead, and all parents care and want the best for their kids.
Thank you. Mr. Manning.
My name is James Manning. I'm the current vice chair of the Richland District 2 School Board, and I'm the only parent, only sitting board member who's a parent of a student enrolled in Richland 2 schools. I come from a family of educators, including myself. I have my master's in education. I've taught in our Midland schools, and my wife Donna Manning, who's a former Richland 2 teacher and administrator, and currently works at the state in education. Not only am I a board member, but I'm also dedicated to the community. I'm the president of my neighborhood association. I've been the president of the Decker Boulevard Business Coalition and many other organizations in the area. I take the education of our children seriously. I've missed 0 board meetings in the 4 years I've been on the board, including the time I Skyped in while on vacation. Some of you may know that I was all business on top with tie and shirt, but I was wearing my vacation shorts underneath. I'm a public servant who considers all viewpoints. I have a track record of listening and being available, including my goal of visiting all SICs in the school district. I was not quite successful. We have over 40, and they all schedule at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manville.
Good evening. My name is Paul Manville. I'm a doting daddy to 2 girls that are in Richland 2 schools. I've got a 5th grader going into the trials of middle school next year. I've got a 3rd grader. So my wife is an employee of Richland 2. She's an elementary school teacher at Langford Elementary. Why I'm in this race is my first time I've ever run for elected office. I'm an investment advisor. So what I wanted to see was that we are stewards of the money. So far, Mr. Miley has done an outstanding job. I want to continue that and work with my compatriots on the board by being a leader and listening to them to bring what needs to this district, which is stability. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey.
Good afternoon. My name is Amelia Mackey, a product of Aiken County Public Schools and a graduate of the University of South Carolina, and an owner of a communications, PR, and consulting firm. I'm also the product of a talented, inspirational, phenomenal educator from whom I caught my love of learning and my passion for advocacy. I've been a Columbia resident for 28 years and a Richland 2 community member and parent for 19 of those years. I'm active in my church, my community, and I've been contributing my time both at local school levels and the district for years. I'm currently enjoying my tenure on the board of directors for the South Carolina Improvement Council. I've served as a homeroom mom, magnet mom, football mom, cheerleader mom, track mom, volunteer, PTSO member, and the whatever you need person in the schools for my family and my community for more years than I can tally. I'm honored to have graduated from Education Policy Fellows, where I have learned much about policymaking and advocating for our students, our schools, our communities. I'm humbled to have become a champion for not only my 2 children educated in District 2, but for countless children in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Mobley.
My name is James Mobley. I have 2 sons who have graduated from Richland District 2, and I have 3 grandchildren who currently attend Richland District 2. I have been living in Richland District 2 for over 30 years, and I'm seeking a seat on the board because I believe that every profession in the school district, from custodians to bus drivers to superintendents, are equally important and play a role in every child's education. It is also my belief that every role has been overlooked in one aspect or another. Everyone should be on a level playing field in all areas. Each child deserves a quality education, and every professional should be equally recognized. I have 3 grandchildren that attend the school, and 2 of them are on the autism spectrum and need special attention. I will continue to press forward to get the attention and funding they need, as well as the special resources that their teachers and therapists need. Every child has different abilities, and no child should be overlooked regardless of social or economic background. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Plank.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. A little bit about me and why I'm here. My name is Craig Plank. I'm married to my bride, Dondi Mercer Plank. We have 3 children, Chandler, Chase, and Camille. I was raised in a household with a father who was a career military and a mother a career educator. I've been with the same company for the past 21 years, and 17 of those years I've owned my own State Farm agency here in the district, actually around the corner on Park Lane Road. While running my agency, I also coach leadership training to other agents throughout the country. I have served as an SIC chairperson for a school in the district, as well as a treasurer for a PTO, also for a school in the district. And my bottom line is that we must relentlessly pursue and provide an excellent education to all of our children by the acquisition, retention, and development of great teachers and well-qualified administrators and district employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spector.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Spector. I've lived in the district for over 26 years. I work for Southern Wesleyan University as the regional director in the adult education program and higher education. I see every day what it takes for working adults to go back to school once they've graduated or whether they haven't graduated. As a board member, I have faithfully served and guided the district with great honor and distinction for the past 12 years. I am currently serving as Secretary of the Board of Trustees for Richland 2. As an active board member, parent, and community member, I have been honest, sincere, and an assertive voice for our children and the community. I'm willing to build I'm willing to build a bond with other board members to provide the best education possible. I currently serve as an advocate, not only at a local level, but a state and national level as well. Making sure public education and funding is the top priority of our elected officials.
Thank you. All right, we'll begin now with question number 1, and you'll each have 90 seconds to respond to the question, and we will begin with you, Ms. Anderson. And I'm happy to repeat the question as we go down if anyone needs that. Please identify the top 3 things you believe the district should focus on within the next 5 years.
Top 3, did you say? Top
Yes.
5.
Top 3 things in the next 5 years.
One of the things that we will continue to focus on is safety. The second one is teacher-student ratio. I think that's very important, that we keep our ratio between 18 to 20, not over 20 per classroom. Also, I want to focus on maintaining a balanced budget. It's very important that we keep our budget balanced so that we can keep our AAA, AA rating, which keeps our interest rate down on our bond money.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Caution Parker?
My top three priorities are to ensure a safe and secure, productive environment for all students and all staff. The second is to ensure district resources are dispersed equitably and used effectively. By resources, I'm referring to opportunities for all students, effective assignment of staff, funding, and time. The third is to help set direction for the district. Setting the direction for the district has a major impact on all aspects of the school system. Therefore, the board's focus must be broad in perspective and not so much focused on the day-to-day operations of the district, which is the responsibility of the superintendent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cleveland Jennings?
Yes, the top 3 things that I think the district should focus on should be first and foremost the education. The next is a safe environment for our kids to have a quality education. And lastly, I would like to say the budget. Regardless of the budget, of how much you have for different districts, that I think that it should be equally distributed among all schools within the district.
Thank you. Mr. Dublin?
Yes. My top 3 things are safety for all schools and all our children in those schools and all of our staff members. Second is stability. I like to see the high rigor maintained throughout all of our schools, along with the innovative programs that are in place, and hopefully we're able to add some more of those innovative programs to the district. Lastly, I would say the success of the district should be maintained in its most powerful form. Success across the board, education, looking at how we hiring the best teachers, staff, and just making sure that all kids receive that wonderful education that they can receive here in the district.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon?
My three priorities connect to my three tenets. All kids can learn. We need to reduce the punitive measures that result in criminalizing disengaged learners and adopt innovative research-based measures that have been proven to spark interest and to close the achievement gap. Secondly, I believe that all teachers can lead. All teachers need to be entrusted with the tools, strategies, and the direction to lead as the frontline transformers in our schools. And that's giving teachers real recognition, considering substantive raises and pay scales that would attract the brightest and the best, and rewarding those in the system with salaries that would give them the freedom to commit fully to teaching our kids. And thirdly, all parents care and want the best for their kids. Our parents are not only caretakers of our learners, but they're also homeowners. And so a priority of the district should be finding ways to better deal with the burden of growth that has resulted in this district.
Thank you. Mr. Manning.
As several others have already said, student safety is a primary concern. If students aren't safe, they're not in a conducive environment for learning. We must protect our children. 2, teacher support. Teachers are on the front line. Teachers are the ones who educate our children. They must have the resources and the lack of administrivia in their classrooms so that they can focus on the task at hand and make sure that they have the proper tools. Third, I think that we need to engage our students. We need to use data, continue to dive into the data to make sure that we have our students moving in a positive direction, particularly in the area of middle school, which is where I think we need a lot of work going forward.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mantle.
My top 3 would really come out of, 1, I would want to see the board be proactive with the oncoming pay for teacher evaluation scales that will be coming down the pike. They're doing it in other states. It'll be here soon. This board should advocate for these teachers that they are judged objectively, not subjectively, because sometimes there are personality issues, and those need to be taken out of that mix. Secondly, I would like to see better partnerships with private businesses in this district. We have some very large corporations, and I think we should take a look to see where we can find common ground between the employers and what we are producing our employees. Third, I would like to see real effort made to closing the growing digital gap. We have kids that know how to use technology and they will succeed in life. That is going to be the bridge that everybody's going to have to cross in this new generation, and we need to make sure that everyone has access to that technology at home and at school.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey.
My top priority, the continuation of academic excellence in District 2, maintaining and implementing as necessary support systems to ensure the success of every child, in turn creating future productive, positive, contributing, happy members of society. Secondly, the pursuit of equity and parity of resources, both inside and outside of classrooms, creating in some instances and continuing in others a system of equity of resources within the halls of all schools. By that same token, creating equity and parity outside of the classroom with regard to resources available on the grounds in each campus, including the conditions of campuses and facilities themselves. The result, the creations of myriad pockets of pride among each school. Last but certainly not least, an all-out campaign for parental and community engagement and partnership. Not only traditional measures of engagement such as attending PTSO meetings and SIC meetings, but schools partner with community businesses, civic organizations, and the very heart of our communities, the human resources and the people that comprise our district.
Thank you. Mr. Mobley.
My first one would be safety of the kids in the area, making sure that all the policies are enforced and we need new ones to bring in new ones. My second one would be the budget. Right now the budget is at 66% for salaries, 22% for benefits. So we ain't got a whole lot in there for the kids, so we need to put something in there for the kids too. My last one would be discipline. I've been in association with the Richland 2 Black Parents Association. They're upset about the alarming rate of black youth being expelled from school, and they're upset about a lot of the bullying that's going around in school. And I think we need to, but it's a long time coming. We should have been settled this situation, but it's been a long time coming and it needs to be settled.
Thank you. Mr. Blank.
Okay, so my three, one would be strong board and district leadership through addressing district growth and safety of our students with prudent fiscal responsibility while considering the student district needs and the community. Second, committing to listen to new ideas from all viewpoints in order to pursue academic excellence, including supporting teacher development, supporting the infusion of cutting-edge technology in the classroom, and supporting the needs of teachers with a manageable class size. And then my third is, again, focus on the acquisition and the retention and the development of great teachers and well-qualified district employees and their staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Spector?
My three top priorities are safety for the environment of our schools, not only for our students, but for our teachers and staff. My second would be to still work, as we have been in the past, on keeping the teacher and student ratios low. My third would be the quality of education, not just to teach the higher achievers, but also teach the students that learn from hands-on.
Great, thank you. We'll move on then to the second question, and Mr. Harmon, we're going to start with you and come back around, and again, you have 90 seconds. What is your stance on the expansion of magnet programs in Richland 2, and how would you address parental concerns of factors that limit student participation, such as transportation and the application process? Mr. Harmon.
Well, I believe that magnet programs, STEM programs, STEAM programs, IB programs, advanced placement programs, alert programs are excellent programs that the district needs to continue to develop and put funds into and highlight. But I also believe that, speaking to the concerns of the parents about the issues that keep their students out of it, if we want to be a world-class district, we have to find ways to meet those needs of those parents. It shouldn't be a matter of socioeconomic issues limiting a student from being able to attend, and that's usually the case. And in addition to that, I also want to speak to the fact that as great as those programs are, I think we're missing a swath of students when we don't consider the crafts, artisanship, craftsmanship, those areas, bringing those innovative things back to the classroom, the CAPE program, expanding those, because we're missing out on, we're teaching to the high rollers, and I was a high roller in school, and I appreciate high rollers, but there are a lot of kids, as a teacher, I see that we're missing.
Great, thank you. Mr. Manning?
I think the magnet programs in our district are a vital component of who we are as Richland 2. I was one board member who asked that we review our magnets to make sure that they're all as effective and efficient and the best use possible of the resources in our school, and that review is currently underway. I've also voted to expand our magnets. For the first time, we created a second program of the same magnet with CFK North at Moeller Middle School to create easier access for those parents who live on the opposite end of the district for a program that was very popular. We've also continued to add magnets on the south end of the district in elementary school at Forest Lake Elementary, where we are short on magnet options for our students. School choice, I do think, is a critical component also, slightly different from our magnets, but important. And we are addressing our career and technology students with the Institute of Innovation in a way that has not been seen in the state. So I'm very excited about where we're going with that. I think that we do need to look, though, at access to our magnets and the application process, which is what the district is in the process of doing now at the instruction of the board. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mandel?
What I would say is that, yes, magnets are the carpet of what Richland 2 is. And so you're not really going to change that. What you're going to do is look to the future of what technology and industry is going to be doing, and we've got to get these kids ready for that. The issue of moving kids from one place to another, the parents getting them there, is an impediment for certain students. But what I would say is let's use the technology that's in place. Well, who's to say that you can't do some of these classes by WebEx, by webinar, in the school that they're in, that they could go to the magnet that they want to? Let's think outside of the box. Let's use the technology we have, and let's work together as a football team. We all have a vested interest in that this happens, and with community support, we can bridge that issue.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey?
I believe that all children should be able to attend and participate in any program in the district. Years ago, I rallied with other parents at my children's school to talk about the redrawing of attendance lines and how oftentimes children must go where the bus goes. What folks don't understand is that that impacts magnet programs, children who are part of magnet programs and may not have transportation to be able to get to the school that they want to go to, if they're part of the program that they are, have to go where the bus goes. I think we should work on true choice. I've talked about that, I've advocated that, I've written letters, I've emailed to have a bus system or something that allows children to truly go where they want to go. If there's going to be choice in our district, then we should be able to provide transportation or be considerate with regard to things like attendance lines and looking at how children are impacted in magnet programs. I also think it's important to celebrate not only how smart children are, but how are they smart. If they are smart in the arts or more educated programs or hands-on or different varying measures of learning, that we should be able to provide educational opportunities for those students and not have them impeded by something such as transportation.
Thank you. Mr. Mobley?
Yeah, it's time to just tell it like it is. You know, everybody know the magnet program ain't fair. We know that. Everybody know that. But we come up here and we tell everybody we gonna do this, we gonna do that, and then as soon as you get elected, you don't do nothing. You get people coming right back in again doing the same thing. The magnet program ain't fair. Make it fair. The district lines, it ain't fair. Make it fair. That's what you need to do. Don't come up here. I ain't gonna come up here to you and just be no billboard showing you that I can do this. I'm telling you what I want done, and that if I get in there, that's what I'm gonna try to get done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Everybody appreciates the applause, but if you hold them till the end, I'll give you plenty of time to do that. Thank you. Mr. Plank?
Well, like many have said, that the magnet programs do define Richland too, and it's proud to be part of that. You know, as a business owner, and I look at what is coming out of the schools, I'm proud of what we see. But at the same time, these magnet programs are designed to be able to prepare these kids to be able to go into the business world. We have kids that at the end of this school year, they will be out. And then 13 years from now, those kids will be out. And as a business owner, I enjoy the fact that we have these magnet programs, and I would support that we have diversity throughout the district with the programs. I'm certainly willing to listen to transportation issues as it relates to how we transfer kids to the magnet programs. And I am looking forward to, like James talked about, the R2I2, I think is a great program, and I'm looking forward to see that come out. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Spector?
I definitely support our magnet programs in Richland too. They've been a great access to really, like Craig said, to fund our district. I know the transportation issues came up. We've talked about that many times. It's not so much that Richland 2 could not provide the transportation. We need to look at the state. The state is the one that we get our buses from. So we need to really look out and talk to the state legislators about getting some more buses for our districts. I know a lot of people complain about the transportation, but it all falls back on the state. I've even support when we even expanded CFK. We've got one in the south end, now one in the north end. But at the same time, we've also looked, I've been a very big advocate of looking what works in those magnet programs. How can we mirror them in a regular classroom? They're doing something right, and it's most likely it's because it's in a small environment. But in the regular schools, we can't have the small environments like we do in the magnet program.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson, back to you.
Would you repeat the question?
I surely will.
I want to make sure I answer it.
What is your stance on the expansion of magnet programs in Richland 2, and how would you address parental concerns of factors that limit student participation, such as transportation and the application process?
Okay. First, my stance on magnet programs is I think it's a wonderful program. They are wonderful programs that we have in the district. However, it is not fair for all students because all parents cannot provide transportation. I think if we could come up with some innovative ways of providing transportation for students to attend magnet programs of their choice, it would be an excellent idea. That is one of the things that we have looked at and tried to do, but because of the funding, we have not been able to do that. As far as parental concerns with transportation, what I tell parents are, if you can possibly carpool with some parents, one take, one pick up. We have expanded some, as Ms. Spector just stated, we have expanded some of our programs. Center for Knowledge, Center for Achievement, and we also, the new elementary school that we're building, elementary number 20, in the southern end of the district, we did discuss making that a magnet school. If that were a magnet school, we would probably easily have transportation there because you would not be having buses going to several different locations. But hopefully in the future we can continue. It's been proven that the magnet program is good. If we can continue to increase the number of students who can participate in magnet programs, I think it would be a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Caution-Barker?
Well, I was one of the ones that implemented the first magnet program we had in Richland School District 2, and that was a TLC at Dent Middle School many, many years ago. And I saw how effective and how popular that program became and how it has grown over the years. And over the past 20 years, we've seen more and more magnet programs coming forth in the district, and they're all very good. My only concern is, as a mother and as a grandmother and an educator, when children apply to these programs and they are turned down, the disappointment and the self-esteem of the children just really dwindles. And I see that as a very, very negative impact on our children. I believe in school-wide magnet programs. I think we can have several magnet programs within a school, and some of our schools do that. The issue of transportation has always been a topic of discussion as to how can we provide transportation for all of our children in the district. Well, I believe having several magnet programs within a school will eliminate a lot of that issue in terms of transportation.
Thank you. Ms. Cleveland Jennings?
It seems like everybody is singing the same song, and it seems like it's been known for a long time that transportation is a problem with the magnet schools. Right now, the magnet schools Richland District 2 has 35 magnet schools. They keep creating magnet schools that are not accessible for all students. It's been an issue for a long time, and still we keep addressing and saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We haven't done it yet. Let's get it done. Let's make it accessible for all students, and we cannot keep leaving out a certain class of students. We got to do something about it when we create the next magnet school. Make sure that our parents have the transportation in order to get them there. Whether you need to partner up with a community organization to get them there. You know it's a need. We have partnerships out there. We need to use them to get accessibility for all students to attend the magnet of their choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dublin?
Well, I concur with everybody. They said everything I was going to say. But let me just reiterate a few things. Transportation is the key. We have a lot of parents, others who are raising children, grandmothers, what have you, that just can't get those children to some of those magnet school programs. We need a district choice so that if a child wants to go to wherever the district can send them instead of their zone area, that student needs to be able to get to that place. And the only way to get there is by transportation. Many of us cannot get students there and pick them up. It's very important that transportation be the number one thing we look at when we look at magnet programs. We need magnet schools to be implemented, but we also need programs in the magnet school realm that catches some of the kids that fall through the crack. We have kids who can do well in the classroom, but they do poor on standardized tests. We have some kids that probably have a problem with the application process. They fall through the cracks. They're kind of disregarded. We need to look at those kids too, because we need to kind of get everyone. Everyone doesn't want to be a nuclear physicist or a technical person. We have some that want to be hands-on. We need to have them involved in some magnet programs that will bring them into the 21st century, but also not just basically throw them to the curb when it comes to them either pass the standardized test or a certain application process that they possibly cannot really put together adequately. So that would be what I would say to all parents, is let's fight for that, and I'll fight for transportation and also the choice throughout the school district.
Great, thank you. Okay, our third question, and Mr. Mobley, we're going to start with you and come back around. What is your strategic long-term plan for closing the student achievement gap?
Ma'am, right now I don't have no long-term plan for closing the achievement gap. I have to get into that situation and see what that situation is all about, then I can work it out. But right now, I can't tell you that.
Okay, Mr.
Now, with the
White.
rest of my time, still got some more time, the rest of my time, y'all can go ahead and get your cameras out and take a picture of it, so you can send it to your friends, tell your friends to vote for me, okay? I'm going past my time now. I like to use some of my time, get all my time up.
Mr. Plank.
Well, the achievement gap is something that certainly we want to close, and one of the ways to do that, I have spent some time with principals throughout the district, and it's really inspiring to see principals who do have a clear vision of what the future looks like, and identifying that, hey, at ninth grade, if we're not able to capture these kids in ninth grade and say, how are we going to make sure that we can improve this graduation, and thread that back into the middle schools, and then after speaking to an elementary school principal, thread that into the elementary school. It's been said that as early as fourth grade, some kids check out, especially if they're second language learners. And so I believe that if we can have collaboration not only among teachers, but also from high school to middle school, from middle school to elementary school, in addition, other districts, I think that would be extremely healthy, and then identifying what are the trends so that we can work on closing this gap. Thank you.
Ms. Spector.
It's a really difficult question because even in the past 12 years, we've been working on trying to close that gap. It continues just to get bigger, even though we try to stay on top of it. I know one of the things that we're doing in the district, we work real close with the charter school so that the guidance counselors can identify those students to help them when they're in the middle school age, even putting them over in the charter school just so they can graduate. But I think one of the biggest things is to close that gap is we've got to get the parents back involved. Somehow, parents need to take a stance and be a parent again instead of just letting your children go to school without any supervision at all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Anderson, we're back to you.
Thank you. If I could answer that question and be effective, it would have been closed by now. That's a question that no one can answer until. That's a question that if we knew the answer to, the gap would be closed. I think one of the things that I would like to see us do is identify what some of the problems are. What I feel some of the problems are, we have too many students in one particular classroom. All students learn differently, and there's no set way that all children can sit in a classroom and learn at the same pace. We have to identify the underlying cause. And once we get to the underlying cause, then we work from there. But to sit here and pretend that I have the answer in how my plan would be to close the gap, I'm not going to say that, because if I had the last 24 years that I've served on this board, I promise you the gap would have been closed. We can just continue to try to find ways to figure out the bottom line, work from there, and close the gap. Sometimes some teachers may have too many children that are in their classroom that learn differently. And when you have a child that learns differently, you have to figure out their learning pattern and teach them accordingly to how you figure that they learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Caution Parker?
It is a very difficult question, and it's a national question, and it probably will always be for some time. I think data analysis is critical. It needs to be ongoing, continuous, often. I think some of the magnet offerings that we're talking about offering here in Richland School District 2 will help address some of those issues. Middle school, elementary school's here, middle school dips down, and then high school comes back up. And that's a national issue as well. And just what is happening in middle school where the children sort of take a dip and then start rising to the top again when they get into high school. I think we need to look at our grading system and our assessment of our students. And we also need to look at the learning styles of students. And one thing we do know, and I can tell you with 34 years experience, a child will not learn in your classroom if you don't build a relationship with that child. So that to me is critical. And there's no one answer. It's an ongoing issue and has been for some time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cleveland Jennings?
Yes, it's going to take a long time to close the achievement gap. But I think we need to start in a different direction now. And I think that early intervention and prevention of students that are in teachers' classes, because as a teacher, you know from the first 8 days what students are going to have a hard time, which student is going to have a little bit behavior problems. One of the 4 cores of Richland District 2 is community. We need to use our community resources in order to help us close this achievement gap. With my nonprofit organization of just giving that one-on-one time of teaching a child a subject or training with them after school in addition to what the teachers have already said for them to do, each one of them graduated with their class. Instead of making them feel, I guess, less smarter than other students within the class, partner them with these community organizations so they too can get the education that they need in order to close the gap. I think that will be a great start. Thank you.
Mr. Dublin?
In order to close the gap, a simple thing needs to be done. In my 20 years plus in education, I found that too many families don't have the basic tools to adequately augment their education at home. And this is a simple thing called the computer. Many districts that I worked in, they've had computers that were outdated, they were throwing them away, whatever. When I was a principal in another state, implemented a program that took those same computers they were destroying or throwing away or just letting collect dust. And we allowed people from the community to come in to pick these computers up because they had no computers. And something is better than nothing. They would pick these computers up, they'd be so happy, and we would give them to them. All we had to do was basically tell them they had to provide a way to pick up these computers and computer parts. And these are working computers, and I'm sure probably the same here in this district. That is something that is, for some of us, it's just simple practice. You know, having a computer in the home, having a laptop, having the tablets and stuff. There's a lot of families out here that don't have any of those things at all. Parent involvement. We have to get the parents involved. If we're going to close the achievement gap, we got to start it at people's homes. Because many parents, when they come to school, they feel intimidated. They don't want to come to school. They don't have the time to come to school. We got to find a way to get the parents into the schools and let them know they're a part of this educational process. And the last thing, and a couple people have kind of touched on that, learning styles. All students can learn, but not the same way each day. It's important to understand that some kids were, again, falling into the cracks because we don't either identify them properly or we just kind of let them go by the wayside and we go on to the next student.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon?
I appreciate this question because closing the achievement gap is something I've studied in each of my master's degrees over the years. That's my focus, that's my passion. Anyone that knows me in the district knows that that's what I'm about. When we talk about closing an achievement gap, much of what we recognize as and call an achievement gap is really an opportunity gap. Many students are failing, falling through the tracks, and simply not developing proficiency because they aren't afforded the opportunities in terms of resources or educational exposure and experiences to adequately compete with their peers. To fix this begins with expanding our thought process, ideas, and perspectives on what a world-class education is. Richland 2 speaks of itself as a global school district, and we harp those and we see the billboards around the district about the IB programs, and again, I go back to the idea there's a swath of students that we're missing when we do away with programs that are not necessarily considered the standard or the traditional academic programs, and we're missing those kids. Another thing I've heard repeated over and over again is about parents. And disrespectful, disengaged, or delinquent students does not always equal disinterested students. Parents. It does not equal disinterested parents. Last but not least, with regard to what we do in the classroom to deal with the achievement gap, culturally responsive classrooms. That's something we've talked about with the district, with the Black Parents Association. I've met twice with the superintendent about that. If we teach and guide instruction according to data and learning styles and multiple intelligences.
Mr. Manning?
As others have said, this is a multifaceted problem. There's no one answer on how to fix the achievement gap. In Richland School District 2, we have approved additional early childhood programs, pre-K programs. We know that the earlier that we start, we have the data that shows that those students will do better throughout their tenure in our district. We're working with faith-based programs to provide additional opportunities for teachers to have training with some of our folks in our district so that students who have those early opportunities have the best early opportunities possible. We also, as a district, we have met with other folks in Richland 1, the City of Columbia, with Richland County with a program called My Brother's Keeper, which is a national initiative, and the City of Columbia and those of us in Richland County are working together to look at what are the resources that we have, where are the gaps specifically, and how do we match the resources to the gaps and fill the additional gaps that are not covered. Mentors is a big issue. Many times we like to look at school districts and point the finger and say, how are you going to close the achievement gap? We need folks, mentors, volunteers, other folks from the community to be part of the solution and not always point the finger back at us and ask us why we're failing in that endeavor. Also, our IB programs, I do think, are very effective. They are global. We do have those in some of our schools with the greatest needs, and they are shown to be effective with children across the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mandel?
Reading. Teach a child to read. They will eventually figure it out, and they will figure out every child can learn when they know how to read. I would institute that intervention issues into early childhood education, tests at 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade levels that they can read at that reading level. If they can't, the reading coaches are brought in, the mentors are brought in, that child is taught how to read at that grade level. We catch them if they're early, coming in, raised in the district, or they're moving in, we can catch them at those points that they can read at that grade level. Thank you.
Ms. Mackey?
What do we consider to be a true measure of an achievement gap? Is it a South Carolina standardized test score? Is it an SAT score? Is it a report card grade? Once we identify what we are measuring at any given time, we can talk about the other mitigating factors. Our teachers are tasked with educating our children just as they are. They don't get to pick and choose the child that they educate. Whether they've been read to at home or not, they have to educate them. Whether they've been supported or not, they have to educate them. Whether they're going to a debilitating divorce, they have to educate them. Whether they've eaten the night before, they have to educate them. Whether they're homeless, they have to educate them. Whether they have learning disabilities that have been identified or not, they have to educate them. Proper test-taking skills, do they know? They have to educate them. Engaging our parents in such a way as to find out what's going on at home is a critical starting point. From there, we start with the children's needs and modulate up from there. But parent partnership and identifying the children's basic needs should be our foundational starting point.
Okay, thank you. Before we start with closing arguments, closing remarks, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. So Sally has told me that we're doing okay with time, and I know that we had said in the when we started that we would do 3 questions. We do have some additional questions. Martha, Al, are we okay with doing 1 more question? How many audience questions do we have? Okay, so I think we're okay if we do at least 1 more question.
Yeah, since they were prepared by the Richland 2 Teacher Forum, I'd like to try to get a couple of those in because the teachers thought about them, and that's why they're being presented.
All right, so let's, again, 90 seconds. Get a little cheat sheet here. Let's start with Ms. Cleveland Jennings. Let's start with you this time, okay? And the question is, What is your opinion on the current debate regarding teacher evaluations based on student performance?
Well, I really think the teacher evaluation among student performance is really needed, because if the students are not learning, then if the teacher's not teaching, the student is not learning, and they're not serving the purpose that they're supposed to do. So if her evaluation comes up short, and time again, she is not making the mark as producing well-educated students, then her paper performance should show that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Dublin?
Teacher evaluations are very important, always have been. And it's the one thing that's never been, I guess, constant in education, public education. It changes over the years, the way they do it. They tie it into student performance, and I can understand it, being a teacher myself and being an administrator. But it's important to understand that sometimes the student performance does not adequately reflect what that teacher is doing in the classroom. There's a lot of problems in the classroom, folks. I think I'm preaching to the choir. So sometimes that evaluation process may not come out the way that you may feel. You also have to look at the objectivity of the evaluation process and the evaluators to make sure that things are balanced in nature, so that we can really look at what that teacher is doing, what those kids are doing. That goes back to data and how that particular school is functioning. So it's important to look at the student, but it's also important to look at the evaluation process. It's something that we need. It's set down by district through the standards from the Department of Education. But it's also important, let's look at the total picture. And that means basically kind of look at those students, see where they're going, see where they're coming from, look at the class size, and a lot of variables that make that evaluator hopefully look at just what that particular teacher is doing, because there are a lot of things that go on in the classroom on a daily basis that teachers have to deal with, and they have nothing to do with the 3 R's. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon?
Can you please restate the question?
Yes. What is your opinion on the current debate regarding teacher evaluations based on student performance?
Well, as a classroom teacher for the past 17 years, and currently a classroom teacher, that debate and that discussion has come up many times. And anyone that's in the classroom today knows that the performance of one student is not on one teacher, that there's several people involved, not only in the classroom, social workers, guidance counselors, psychologists, resource teachers, et cetera, that are involved in that quotient of that child's performance. And I believe that if we do go ahead with teacher pay based on performance, there must be in that calculation or in that rubric or in that standard the understanding that there are several people involved in this child's performance and that it not all weigh on one teacher. That's my stance.
Mr. Manning?
I think that the state of South Carolina is between a rock and a hard place. We can't continue with no child left behind, because at the end of the day, every school in the state would be a failing school based off that measure. So the state was forced to come up with an alternative way to measure success in our schools. And part of the alternative way that we measure that success, we had to have some sort of teacher evaluation built into that. No teacher that I know is afraid of being evaluated for their performance. In fact, the teachers who are working hard and doing the right thing want to be accountable, want to have their students be successful. That's what they come to school to do every day. It is very difficult, though, to measure that performance on paper. Our art teachers and our PE teachers and the other folks that Mr. Harmon measure all, and the folks that bring them to school every day, our bus drivers and our cafeteria workers, everybody, our community members, all go into the success of those children. And even sometimes then, with all those folks working together, some of the challenges are just too great for that child. And I don't think that I can imagine some of the horrors that our children experience at home every day, unable to learn. So I think we're in a difficult situation. We're faced with the challenge that we will have to come up with some form, but it is very difficult. And I hope that we can all work together to find the best way possible to do that as fairly as possible to our teachers.
Thank you. Mr. Mandel?
Fortunately, as I said, one of the first things I do in my top 3 over the next 5 years is to be a bulwark against the charges that our teachers somehow are failing a student because there's an issue in the classroom that does not allow the class to move forward. So what I want is to see that if there's going to be performance pay, that as a board member and as board members ourselves, we are advocates and partners with our teachers. That if there's going to be standards that these teachers have to be met, there should be fair and equitable hearings, that if there's an issue between the observer and the teacher, that can be addressed. Thank you.
Ms. Mackey?
In a nutshell, educators are tasked with teaching each child, as we said previously, regardless of a child's resources, support system, and personal concerns. I think it's extremely important to support a system of accountability within our school systems to ensure that teachers who are educating and are influencing our children are providing a quality work product in a perfect world. It's difficult, however, to measure such a work product, and there are mitigating factors that I've listed before. Test scores alone cannot merit a teacher's things such as a teacher's value, a teacher's salary, and ultimately their worth, based on just a basic sampling of the issues that I mentioned previously.
Thank you. Mr. Mobley?
Mr. Mobley love the kids, y'all. I love the kids. Let me tell you something. You got Joe Clark teachers, and you got teachers. You got some teachers that'll really get to that child and help that child and get that child through what that child needs to get through. You got some teachers just want the child out of class. She don't care whether he come back next year or not. There's some of them will just pass on and let them go on. But the ones who stay there and be that Joe Clark and teach that child and evaluate that child after she get through with that child, know what that child knows what she done taught him, she gonna stick with that child. It's been too many kids rolling through these schools that don't know nothing. And when they get out, you put them out, they come back to the community and they go and they get in trouble. I learned the board got a policy that they can expel kids and don't even have to see their parents. Now, why would you want to expel somebody's child and don't see their parents or see who this child belongs to? If you know who this child belongs to, I want to see you. And I want to tell you why I'm putting your child out of school. Because like I said, you got some Joe Clark teachers. And they'll come and they'll tell you exactly why they're putting your child out of school. Because your child ain't doing it right. But if your child doing it right and she trying to do what she trying to do, he trying to do what he trying to do, and the teacher sitting there and that teacher can, patience. I've been a hairdresser for 35 years. It takes patience. When you got patience in the classroom with a child, you done did something.
Thank you. Mr. Blank?
Yes, first I'd like to echo the comments from James, Paul, and Amelia and the challenges that go into this debate. It's clear that measurements are needed, but I'm thankful to see this group of educators who are here who find it calling to be in this profession. That's the way I felt with my mom's career during her whole career. But test scores are hard to be reliable. You have motivation issues. You have many other components that add complexities to that. And it's hard to have those objective and subjective blendings come together to be able to work on performance. But one of the concerns I would have is I don't want to stifle the collaboration we have among teachers, among schools, among districts. I think that's so critical for us to thrive and all lift in the whole state so that we can further pursue this excellence for our education. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Spector?
I echo some of the same remarks that the other candidates have made. I'm actually totally against teachers' pay being evaluated on the performance of the students. There's a lot that goes in the classroom. You don't know what the students are actually going through before they walk into that classroom that morning, whether it's a she or a he. Some of them didn't even have a bed to sleep in. So if you're going to evaluate that teacher that particular year, and you've got students that maybe come from broken homes, you're going to have some high achievers, that teacher might have a bad year just because of where each child came from and their living, the way they have to live in their environment. So I don't think it's fair to a teacher. I think a teacher should have standards and be evaluated. I think it should be back on the district to look at those evaluations and see what we can actually do to correlate it with our test scores.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
That's a difficult question for me to answer, and I'm going to answer it Melinda's way, because there are pros and cons on teacher pay performance, because you would have to make it fair so that every teacher, the students would be the same. So if you got all the students the same and you're evaluating the teachers on those students, then it would be fair. But when you have alert students, AP students, and then you have the struggling students, how are you going to make that fair? Because one teacher could have a room of 10 struggling students and 5 students are not struggling, but because 4 of those struggling students don't meet the grade, then that teacher will not get paid for her performance because 4 did not make it. So if there is any way that it can be divided or the bottom line is fair for all teachers, I would support it. But I do not see how that would ever work, that all teachers would get a fair increase by paying them based on their performances. I just don't think it's fair. Thank you.
Ms. Caution-Parker?
It's a very, very difficult and complex issue with teacher pay for performance. Number one, the validity of it. How is the plan developed? Have teachers been able to provide input into the plan? What do you do with the related arts teachers compared to the math teachers? How are students assigned to teachers when they're assigned to school? Do you have your high flyers, your middle of the road, and your lower performing students all in one class? Usually, and I'm just saying that sometimes it appears that the new teachers are the ones that get the lower performing students. And so when you look at talking about pay for performance, there's so much to consider and so much to look into, so much that goes into that whole process. I think it would behoove us to allow teachers to sit together and come together and plan something regarding pay for performance. What do they think is fair? What do they think is right?
Great, thank you. I'm going to pause here and let you all tell me about the time. I know the teachers worked really hard to prepare the questions, and we weren't really sure. Okay, go ahead. Okay, closing remarks. Thank you. Closing remarks, 90 seconds, and we'll start at the other end of the table with Ms. Spector.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for hosting this forum. And also I'd like to extend a special thank you to our parents, teachers, and staff members for being here tonight after a long day at work. Currently serving as a board member, I've proven to the community, teachers, students, and district staff that I am available to listen and help in any way I can. If I'm reelected to the Richland School District 2 Board of Trustees, I will continue to be a voice for our children and community. And I will continue to be an advocate for public education. So make your vote count November 4th. Re-elect Barbara Spector, School Board, Richland 2.
Mr. Plank?
Yeah, first I'd like to thank you guys for being here this evening. I've taken time over the past couple months to tour the district and listen to the voices of principals, teachers, parents, and community members, and it's become clearly evident to me that this is a critical election. As I look ahead into the future of our district, the safety of our kids, the management of our district's growth, the evaluations of the programs, the continuing implementation of cutting-edge technology, at the same time juggling the federal and state mandates, it is critical that we have board members who lead with a strong common sense, have a clear vision, are good stewards of the district's budget, fiscally responsible, listen to teachers and empower them to do their job, And also, as I mentioned before, relentlessly pursue and provide an excellent education for all of our kids. You know, should I be fortunate enough to serve this district, I pledge these 4 things: that I will reject passivity, I will accept responsibility, I'll lead courageously, and I'll invest eternally into the lives of our kids and the educators in this district. Finally, I've always said that the clearer the vision, the fewer the options, the easier the decision. The clearer the vision, the fewer the options, the easier the decision. And I want to thank you for making me part of your decision on November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mobley?
It's time for change, y'all. It's time for change. Let's go to the polls and make a change. It's time for fairness in these schools. It's time for us to do the right thing. It's time for us to get on the right feet. When you go to them polls and you vote in November, vote for the kids. Vote for the kids. The main thing in this election is the kids. Keep your sight on the kids. When you vote, vote for the kids. Thank you.
Ms. Mackey?
I've learned over years that although we have innumerable successful students in our district and are to be applauded, there are so many of our children in our community whose needs and voices are not being met. Who's to be a voice for parents who need help navigating a system that is not always user-friendly? I offer myself as an advocate for our faith-based communities, educators, businesses, everyday people just like us, who want to feel connected to a system that is supposed to be designed for us all. I offer myself as a voice of reason to stand up for all when the squeaky wheel continuously gets the oil, even though all of the wheels, all 27,305 of them, need and deserve oil. I offer my voice when our resources and fiscal priorities are not always distributed evenly among all 42 of our schools and centers. I did not suddenly surface a few weeks ago and start making promises. For years, I've been volunteering, helping, advocating, and pleading the cause for equity and parity, and for so many of our children, families, and educators whose voices have not always been considered loud enough or whose interests have not been deemed important enough. I recently heard a quote that I will not soon forget. It was until each and every voice has been heard, the whole story has not been told. I've been blessed to have been endorsed by the Richland County Education Association and other supporters who believe that together we can make a difference and we can do better and transform good to great. I'm not running for office to benefit Amelia Mackey, but to benefit a host of voices so that our story can be adequately told.
Thank you. Mr. Mandel?
We are the army of democracy. That these compatriots of mine came up on this stage out of their life to put themselves forward, that everybody could vote on the merits of what we present as our candidacy, just shows how beautiful this country is. And I am so proud that I have the ability in this country to run for a position on the school board. With that, as a husband of an educator, as a daddy to 2 girls currently in the school system, I can tell you that I will bring all that I have to this district because I love this district, I love the teachers of this district, I love the kids of this district. And what we need is stability, calmness, and sober thought to make it into the next century. Thank you.
Mr. Manning?
In closing, I believe that in order to be a successful board member, it takes more than just experience as an educator, more than just being a parent, more than being vested in the community. In order to be successful as a board member, you also have to be willing to work with others. Because the board is not a board of one. The board is a group. You have to be willing to listen to other board members, at appropriate times compromise, though not all the time, and be willing to work as a group in order to move forward. I have demonstrated over the last 4 years that that is a quality that I bring to the board, to bring all of those skills, but also bring the ability to work in a group to move us forward. I appreciate your vote as a parent's voice on the board of Richland 2 and as a former educator on November 4th to continue the work that I've done over the last 4 years with Richland School District 2 for all of our students.
Mr. Harmon?
Again, as an educator, as a parent, as a pastor in this local community, I have a passion for the children in this community. I believe that second only to freedom, the greatest right afforded any human being is an education. And Richland too should be positioning itself as a district to be a shining example, not only in this area of the Midlands, but around the state, and bucking the trends. All students, regardless of race, class, creed, socioeconomic circumstances, should have the opportunity presented to them and the kinds of learning experience available to them that make success beyond the halls of learning possible. It should not be in the 21st century in Richland 2, which calls itself a global school district, that African American males who succeed academically are still an anomaly. That should not be the case. Should not be that just our success should be on the football field or on the basketball court. We need to make ways within our classrooms, within our buildings, to meet the needs of all students and make them successful. In conclusion, the troubling statistics of what some have called disproportionate suspensions and transfers and all of those things, that's the things that I'm passionate about. And if you vote for me come November 4th, I promise you those are the things I'm going to advocate for. Those are the things I'm going to lobby for. Those are the things I'm going to present and work with my colleagues on. And I want to thank you again for coming out tonight.
Mr. Dudley?
Thank you. I want to thank everybody up here. Thank everybody out there for coming out, giving us a little of your time to listen to us. I'm John Dublin. I'm just an advocate for children. I've always been an advocate for children, been involved with customer service all of my adult life, be it in law enforcement or in education. I love children. I love working with them. And every day I see what they go through. Every day I see a little what they go through because I just see it on the end of an educator. I also mentor boys between the ages of 11 and 14. I've done that for over 10 years. I see what they go through. And I try and counsel them, try and let them know somebody cares, that somebody's there for them. This school board position for me would allow me to take all the things I have learned experience-wise, all the things I've learned in classrooms and workshops all over this United States. It has also allowed me to understand that there's another side to every story, and I have to kind of look at that side sometimes. I'm married to an educator, and she lets me know that all the time. Your side is always the right side. There's always another side. And I appreciate that because it's allowed me to look a little further than just being that teacher in that classroom. To just be a little more than just a teacher. Because every teacher knows it's not just coming to work, doing your lessons, doing your lesson plan, and then going home. It's so much more that goes on a regular basis. I'll be your advocate. I'll be an advocate for the parents too, because they need some help too. They need some listening time. They need some understanding. And I do hope that you will come out and vote for John Dublin for school board, because I am the advocate for children and all children. Thank you.
Ms. Cleveland Jennings?
Through my professional, personal, and community work, I've been able to leverage relationships and resources through schools and community, empowering youth to stay on the course with their educational journey, with me as a mentor, a mother figure, or simply a friend. I've had the privilege to touch many lives of youth by working in Richland District 2. In the closing of this conversation of everyone, it is like I sit up here and I think, what do I need to do? If you elect me and entrust in me the stewardship of your children, their public education, I promise to continue to work diligently and cooperatively with my fellow school board members to protect the interests of all students of Richland District 2 and hold to the highest level of accountability. If I am elected, I will be very, very resourceful for you and for our community. So on November the 4th, please elect me, Chandra Cleveland Jennings. Thank you.
Ms. Tasha Parker?
Richland School District 2 has been very good to me and my family. My two children received a strong foundation in this district, and I've had wonderful opportunities to grow and develop. I've worked with outstanding employees and superintendents, including the present superintendent, Dr. Hamm. And please know, and let me make this very clear, I support the administration. I bring knowledge and experience to the table. I know that only one person answers to the board, and that is the superintendent. And it is responsibility of the board to ensure the superintendent has everything he/she needs to lead the district and ensure all students achieve maximum learning opportunities at all levels. I firmly believe that to serve on the board is both a privilege and an honor. I am in a position to give back to Richland 2, and what better way than to serve the children, schools, administration, and community than serving on the school board here in Richland School District 2. I have no political agenda, no political aspirations past the school board, just a strong desire to give back to the district that gave so much to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you. I do not have a prepared speech because the letter that we received said spontaneous closing remarks. So I'm going to spontaneously close my remarks by saying, why Melinda Anderson? Why Melinda Anderson? Because I have given to this district 24 years of my service. Being a school board member is not an easy task. Most people think that when you run for the school board, it's just an easy task. You go to a couple of meetings and you monitor. It's not that easy. This is one of the most important elected positions that you can hold, because parents with 27,000 plus students in this district, parents will call you when it's concerning their children. You have to make yourself available. You have to listen. Sometimes it's all they want is someone to listen to them. But it's not an easy job. You are preparing our most important cargo, I'll put it like that, for our future. If we don't educate these children properly today, they are going to be our future, and we will not get our retirement checks on time, and they may not be calculated correctly. My passion is for education, and I will continue to push for proper education for all children. All children are capable of learning. Thank you for coming out, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. We have 3 audience questions, and what we've done is we've collected questions, and obviously there's probably some duplication. So if you would take 1 minute to answer these questions. Ms. Mackey, let's start with you, please. And here's the question. Do you think our schools have enough recesses and allow enough physical activities so that kids can let off steam?
Oh, that's a good question. I know that our standards are such that they're different than they were 40 years ago. Our kids are tasked with much more initiatives. There's a lot more that they have to do. I haven't had an elementary school child in quite a while, but I know that when my kids were in elementary school, they're 19 and 17, the recesses were smaller, and I think we'd have to discuss with the teachers if they think it's adequate. One of the things that I'm a proponent of is partnerships between our parents, our teachers, our communities, and if the amount of time that our children are at recess is not adequate, or they think it's too much, then that's something that we need to talk with our teachers and our parents about, and not lean to our own understanding.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mobley?
Yeah, I think they get enough recess, because when my grandchildren come and they come to my house and they say, Granddaddy, we did this today, we did that today. And they get enough time to do what they want to do. A lot of the kids, you don't have to give them recess, they're going to have their own recess. But recess is good. It's good, and it gives them time to get away from the classroom and doing the things that they do in the classroom. Keep their mind, occupied on certain things, and it'll give them a chance to get their mind off certain things, get back on the right thing. So recess is good. I think it's fine, because my grandkids are happy with recess. When they ain't have a recess, they come tell me. So they ain't told me they ain't happy, so they happy with the recess.
Thank you, Mr. Plank.
Yeah, recess and activity, well, they're kids, so they need that time, that's for sure. This is an important topic beyond just recess. This is a topic about nutrition, as well as having the time for recess and making sure that our kids understand good process in that. And so I trust the district leadership as pertains to right quantity and amount with the trust desk being worked out by them. And finally, just as we run into this new phase of debating nutrition, will certainly be something that will have to be looked at over this year and the years to come. Thank you.
Ms. Spector?
I would say that we have enough recess and activities during the day for our students. And a lot of that, once again, is mandated by the state, and that's just the way it's going to be. So it's going to take changing, once again, some of the state laws on how they mandate each district on how much time we have for recess and activities. But I feel like they have enough, because I think the teachers also incorporate a lot of the activities to help kind of break up just what they're being taught and teach it in a different way.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I can't answer that question because I'm not in the schools to see how the children react with the time that they are allowed for recess. That would be something that I would have to hear from the teachers on and the parents. Because I have a fourth grader at Killian Elementary, and he's never complaining about not enough time. So in order for me to intelligently answer that question, I would have to get some feedback from parents and teachers in order to feel comfortable with the answer that I submit to you tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Caution-Parker?
This has been an issue that came up several years ago about children in recess, and this was brought forward by our Health Advisory Committee. And the recommendation from the committee was to not take recess away from children as a punitive measure. That means if a child came to school and did not finish his or her homework, a lot of times the child would be kept in to do the homework and miss recess. And we made a move in this district not to take away recess from the children as a punitive measure, but to allow them that time. With childhood obesity and diabetes, we have to be very careful in regarding making sure that they have a certain amount of movement and exercise per day. We cannot help with the state mandates, but we were far in front of the state several years ago regarding that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cleveland Jennings?
I too cannot definitely answer that question about when it comes to the recess, but I would say, according to how unhealthy some of our students are, I think we need to get a little bit more research and find out if more recess time will be needed in order to take care of some of the health issues that we have among young people.
Mr. Dublin?
Recess is very important, as you know, for our children to burn off some steam, as they say. I've worked in all levels of education, and I hate to say it, I've seen some schools where they don't even have any recess at all, or it's taken away by either something that's going on in the school, possibly shortened by standardized testing, or something else that's mandated by the district. So on occasion, some students don't get enough recess. But I'll say that in the lower grades, they get a pretty good recess, and they love that recess time, they go crazy. But you have a couple that go out to recess and do nothing but either sit there or stand around and just kind of look at the other kids because they're just so in tune to want to. I had a student the other day say, he'd rather be playing a video, Xbox, whatever it's called. I said, well, now your Xbox is outside, so you need to X around this field. Thank you.
Mr. Harmon?
I believe that recess is very important. It's integral. It's part of the learning process. It's what the students need. And I think it goes back to what someone mentioned earlier, that the issue of not using it punitively, I mean, not taking away recess punitively. As a teacher, as an educator myself in the classroom, that's something that I practice intentionally. I don't care how bad as all outdoors, as they say, the child was, he's not going to lose his recess. I'll find something else to use as punitive measures. But when it comes to the learning process, recess is essential. And even if we mitigate it where at the lower grades, it's a particular length, and as they go up in grades, it's reduced, but it's necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Manning?
I also believe that we shouldn't use recess as a punitive measure to take away from our students. I think this also further underscores the need for physical education in our schools. I think in today's world, we need to teach children how to play, how to be active, and how to continue activity beyond their time in elementary school, because as you know, We're not seeing our high school students necessarily out there running around like we do with our elementary school students. I also think that movement in the classroom as part of the educational process is a critical component, particularly as we talk about the education gap and we talk about our males. They need that movement as part of the learning process because that helps them to actually process and learn. So I think that it is critical that they have enough movement and that that's being used effectively in several areas throughout our schools.
Thank you. Mr. Manville?
Yeah, research has shown that the human brain can't concentrate for but X minutes at a time. You're going to have to break up these things, get these kids to stand up. In-class movement, I think, is a very positive thing. Recess in and of itself is a time and a place that we can always look at. You can always massage it. There are mandates that we have to follow. In and of itself, there probably is enough recess. Can we do it better? Yes, and that's what I would look to do is how can you incorporate it better in it and then give these kids that ability to get up there in class, do whatever they need to do to keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I got that right. Didn't I start with you?
You started with me.
That's what I thought. Thank you. I got away from mine. The second question, and Mr. Plank, let's start with you on this one, please. What would you do to address the discipline referral for expulsion and its disproportionate representation of the African American male?
Yeah, that is clearly a question I've had as I've gone throughout the district, and it is an issue that needs to be explored. This not having the benefit of being involved in the district in the past, this is something that I would say the way to answer this question would be that I am open to listening to all viewpoints and taking a look at the data. I've spent time with Dr. Mills over at Blythewood Academy, understanding what we do have in place when we have issues regarding expulsion exceptions when they're moved and sent to an alternative school. But I'm very interested in the subject matter. I want to make sure that where we've all talked about having equal access to all kids, I want to make sure that we have a fair representation when it comes to discipline as well. But we must look at each disciplinary action on its own merit and judge it accordingly. And you know, I'm a burnt believer in the district having the autonomy to lead because the board has put these trusted individuals in that place. And therefore, we look at those leads and we will consider as a board the appeals as they come forward. Thank you.
Ms. Spector?
Would you repeat that question?
Certainly. What would you do to address the discipline referral for expulsion and its disproportionate representation of the African American male?
I personally look at every student as a student. I don't go in what race they belong to. I look at them for who they are. A lot of the times when we get expulsions, we have a name. It doesn't tell us what race. It will give an age. I try to make sure that when I'm making those decisions, when they come before us, I treat everyone by their merit, as Mr. Plank said. It depends on where their standing is in the school, but I think we should treat every student the same. This is not about race. It's about making sure we do the right thing for a student that goes to Richland School District 2.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Repeat the question, I'm not sure.
Sure. What would you do to address the discipline referral for expulsion and its disproportionate representation of the African American male?
I'll let out the part address. What I would like to do to address the disproportion is to come up with a plan to help our African American males be successful. Being the mother and grandmother of 3 African American males, I know what some of the underlying problems are. And I think this is a national, it's not just a District 2 problem, it is a national problem. Today, African American males feel disrespected in a manner when someone says something to them. They feel that they respect you and you should respect them back. What we need to do is get some African American males together, let them have some say and input on what the problems are. There's always, and I'm coming from a nursing perspective now, you have to get to the underlying cause of the problem before you can rectify the problem. And that would be my way to address, is getting to the bottom cause of the problem so that we can work on it. You go to the emergency room, they can't treat you until they get to the cause of what your illness is. We need to get to the cause of the problems that our African American males are having before we can address the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Caution Parker?
I believe that this is a national issue. I think sometimes, too, that we need to provide more training for our teachers and classroom management, how to build relationships with all students, not just a select group, but all students. I also think that we need to review our policies that we have in place and our extreme policies. We need to review our policies that we have in place. Bottom line is, no one can expel a child from school except the board. That's it. That's it. Teachers and principals can make recommendations, but the bottom line when it comes to the board. And I think this was something that was suggested some time ago, but we need to review our policies and look at that. We need to provide professional development for our teachers on how to relate with all students.
Thank you. Ms. Cleveland Jennings?
I think more diversity training among students, among teachers especially, of how to handle the black male. We are in a predicament that we know that it's a nationwide problem, from how many young black males are killed each day by each other, by someone else, and how it plagues to be a non-concern. Diversity training among our teachers will arm them with the knowledge that they need in order to make a great decision. I've said before, one of the core values of District 2 is community. District 2 needs to look to that community of black males in the community to mentor our young African American males. If a teacher has a problem, she knows the protocol in order to go through guidance to make sure that someone within the community can help this family, because it will be a family issue once it's a child issue, and reach out to them and their churches within the area to get them some help before you expel them and put them in the street. Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Dublin?
I would agree with everything that's basically been said. We have to look at that child before that child got that expulsion phase. I don't think a child just wakes up one day and says, I want to be expelled today, I want to bring a gun today, I want to take drugs to school. There's something in that person's background, something in their environment that leads up to that. That diversity training that we talked about should not be just for the teacher. It should probably be for board members and others that have their finger on the button to say whether or not that child is expelled or sent back to school. So that training needs to be across the board. And I would say that that training could be very easily done in any school district. The national phenomenon is, I hate to say it, the black male, he's the one that's kind of expendable. He's being expelled at higher rates. He's being shot and killed in too many cases. But it's important for us to look at as a district to say, do we need this training? Yes, we do. Who needs the training? I think we all.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon?
When it comes to this issue of discipline and disproportionate expulsions of African American males, I just jotted down some points. We often tell teachers that they need to use data to drive their instruction. And we have data, and that data should drive how we deal with discipline issues. The district has started with the discipline task force. It's a great, and I'm part of that task force, it's a great plan. Going in, looking at the data. I believe it begins with analyzing the data, analyzing the frequency, looking at who's actually referring these students. Looking at, could it possibly be a classroom management issue? Could it be a cultural disconnect, not just based on race, but also based on a generational disconnect? demonstrating to students we care. We have to change our language. When we say that our African American males are at risk or they're endangered, that puts a stigma on young African American males. It already sets them back. It hurts their self-worth and their self-efficacy. We have to change our language, even how we speak to our students. And I think someone mentioned it earlier. The children African American males have to know that we care enough to find out what makes them tick and what makes them work and what makes them motivated. We have to care enough about that.
Thank you, Mr.
And demonstrate.
Mr. Manning.
I was also going to mention that we have the discipline task force in place, which I think is critical, not just for our African American males, but quite frankly for many different groups that we have in our district that sometimes find themselves afoul. All of our students are one decision away from an issue. I think though the old saying a pound or an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We've talked about how do we engage our students in the work that they're doing, and when we keep them engaged, many times we can prevent the situation. I also think that we need to, in many cases, bring respect back to our teachers in the classroom. This is a society issue of how we talk about our teachers to our kids, in front of our kids, about shortfalls that we see as individuals with teachers, and we have to bring that respect back. And quite frankly, I think that we see the problems. I talked about middle school. Middle school seems to be where we start to have a lot of issues. We don't see it in elementary school. I don't see elementary school students being brought before me as a board member with those issues. It's when they hit middle school and high school. Again, we need to look at our middle schools and how we work with our students. And actually, in many cases, our students are not being expelled for issues with the first infraction. It's the response to the infraction. And we need to work with our students on how to deal with those responses and the anger management issues. Again, many of our students are suffering from this problem.
Thank you. Mr. Manville?
This is an issue that I know is out there. It's very passionate. I'll tell you that getting into this race, I don't know enough on it. I'm going to have to learn about it. I don't know anything about the referral process. I don't know how anybody gets referred up and what the issues are. What I know is that this is education. Our job is to educate these kids and get them ready for work. You are not going to be an employer and act the way you want to act and think you're going to keep your job. This is not the way it works. And so what we need to do, well, however we work this out, okay? And the one thing that it can be done is worked out. It needs to be done in the way that we can get these kids ready for the real world. And that's competition against China, India, anybody else. They're coming for our jobs. We got to go for theirs. Together, we can make sure our kids get those jobs.
Becky?
Communication, communication, communication. We're told that, I've heard the gamut of that things are okay and that's only a perception and there's nothing wrong and people that are just complaining, but where there's smoke, there's probably a high probability that there's a little bit of fire nearby. If there's a perception that there's a problem with regard to equity and how those things are matters are handled, then there is. We've got to communicate with the cross-sampling. I would recommend of parents, administrators, community members, and educators to discuss the issue, to discuss best practices and policies, and there should be consistency with regard to disciplinary procedures. If the perception is that we are not consistent, then we need to go back to the drawing board with regard to policy and ultimately practice consistency, compassion, courtesy, sensitivity, and just basic home training of the way you treat people. Ultimately, where there is consistency, where there is compassion, where there is courtesy and understanding, there will more than likely be parity.
Thank you, Mr. Motley.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was raised up in the hood. You got to know the streets. You can't go out in the street if you don't know the street. You got a lot of kids come out the street. They want to learn. It ain't just because they've been in the streets don't mean they don't want to learn. They come to school with dreadlocks. They come to school with all these little parts and stuff in their head. They have the pants all down. That don't mean they're a bad kid. If they do that, you got to go to these kids and talk to them. If they not listening, go in the hood. Don't be scared to go in. I ain't seen no board members in the hood in years. You got to go in the hood, talk to their parents, tell their parents what they're doing, and if their parents tell them to go get a switch, they're going to straighten up. Because back in the day, my mama told me to go get a switch. I knew what that meant. You ain't going to have me in school doing nothing bad. So if you go back out there, talk to them parents, go into the communities, talk to their mama and daddy, and the mom and daddy send them to school right the first time, when you get them, they'll be half ready. But if their mom and daddy don't know what they're doing, you got to go let the mom and daddy know what they're doing. The mom and daddy don't know what they're doing. Their mom and daddy don't know what they're doing until they expel. They come on, mama, they done expel me. Why? He ain't going to tell you the truth. He ain't going to tell you why he got expelled. But if the teacher do it, tell you what's happening and keep you adjusted with what's going on, then you can help that child. Like Joe Clark did. Joe Clark went to them people's houses and they helped them children. And he made them children out of respectable people. And these guys with these dreadlocks and these pants hanging out, they can be respectable people if you treat them like respectable people.
Thank you. We have one more question. Let's come back to the middle. Mr. Manning, let's start with you on this. Many kids struggle between middle and high school math. So, how would you work to bridge the gap between middle and high school math, or smooth the transition between middle and high school?
I think that's an interesting.
I'm sorry?
30-second answers. We're almost out of time.
Oh, okay.
So, you have to be precise.
I have a problem with that. Generally. So I think that, actually I think we should look at the middle school model. I'm not sure our current middle school model works. I think we need to look at whether we do K through 6 or whether we do K through 8 or some other model. Obviously, we've talked about discipline, we've talked about math, we've talked how many issues can we talk about the going to middle school becoming a problem, yet we continue to do it the same way. So I propose we change our middle school model and see whether that works for us going forward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mandel?
I'm sorry, what is the gap that we're asking about?
Between middle school and high school, particularly math.
Math.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to bring real world to the problems. You know, math is a separate own language, but it is the language of coding of technology. So perhaps bridge it in a way to that child that they can apply. I know that as I was growing up, I couldn't understand geometry. How could you apply it? I learned it with a golf lesson. So what you got to do is bring it into real world experience. Perhaps that would work to help mitigate it.
Ms. Mackey?
Based on my own experience with my children and meeting with myriad principals and teachers throughout the district, there are support systems in place. There are transitional math courses, there's tutoring available, there are so many resources we have available to our children, and making sure that they're all aware of the resources that aren't there. And if for some reason there is a child who is struggling with resources that aren't there, then the problem is not the child. We've got bigger fish to fry. We need to figure out why resources are not in place when they should be in all of our schools.
Thank you. Mr. Mobley?
She just told you everything I was going to tell you. So I can't take it no more than 30 seconds. Give me more than 30 seconds, I might take it no more. But she just told you everything I was going to tell you. So move on down.
I appreciate it, James. I go back to what I was saying before about the thread between high school to elementary school. You know, it's refreshing to see a high school principal who is very intentional about the 9th grade year, about making sure that there's collaboration to the middle school, to know what the expectations are, so that the middle school teachers are working with the high school teachers to be able to bridge that gap. And then also that's tied in with the gap we were talking about earlier, and also into some of the expulsions we're talking about. If we're able to identify these kids and see the patterns early enough, that we can address this at the time. Thank you.
Ms. Spector?
I agree. The teachers from the middle school level and the high school teachers, including the guidance counselors, they're the biggest resources for our students, and we need to have them just really look and see if the model that we're using works. But one thing I would like, and I think we can even continue and expand on it, is having the extra math tutoring for the middle school, because I know we have it already, but we might need to expand it and have it even more.
Ms. Anderson?
Ms. Becker took what I was going to say too. I think what we, to answer, I'm going to try to answer both questions, but to help the problem, I think we need to extend tutorial programs, particularly in the middle school. We have it in the high school, but we need more programs in the middle school. And to smooth it over, some years ago, I thought that we needed to reconfigure our grade levels, but I was voted down on that. Sometimes I believe that we have our grade levels. I just couldn't do it in 30 seconds. But I have
It's hard. Thank you. Ms. Caution Parker.
With 16 years of experience in middle school, that pretty often that occurs in terms of math. A lot of times children are not mature enough in terms of being able to think analytically to be able to do the math. We do have a lot of programs in place now to help students. And also at one time we had middle school transition teams, and we'd have a team of teachers to help the children transition from middle school to the high school. And I cannot remember why we stopped doing that, but we did, but then maybe that's something else we need to look at.
Ms. Caution, Ms. Cleveland Jennings?
I think that we need to make it aware to the parents that there's help out there when their child is going to middle school that can bridge the gap between them learning math that they're going to have in middle school and elementary school. We start things so late in life, especially with the education that we have. And I think if we start earlier with some of those soft skills of math entering into middle school, that they will have it by the time they get to middle school.
Mr. Dublin?
You have to connect the dots. That's basically what you have to do. Kids have this thing about math, they don't want to do math, and then you get more kids that really and truly would not want to be into math, and they're really into math. Some of those kids are sometimes with behavioral problems, special needs kids, but they just seem to kind of soar in math. You have to connect those dots. We have a lot of different programs out there now that are free. Khan Academy is one of them. I used it with one of my sons, maybe two of them. And it was just another way that they taught math. I couldn't even fathom. I'm not a math major, so I got a little lesson too.
I believe that the transitional divide seems to be an issue of the standards taught in middle school and the standards expected in high school. And we have to look at that divide or that transition and what are we missing in the connection. And that could be with what Mr. Manning talked about, reconfiguring, making it K-6 and 7 connected to high school, and just reconfiguring that. There are a lot of things involved in middle school. I taught middle school. That was a crazy time for me, and I promise not to do it to myself again, but it just happens.
Thank you. Thank you all, and on behalf of the league and the teachers, I had a great time. Thank you. You were all just fabulous, and it's been my pleasure to be here and work with you. Thank you so much.